Jason. I have Jason Broberg here with me, who works for the Department of Commerce. He's a member of MAPE Local 601, and he also sits on the political council with me. So, hi, Jason. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Megan. It's good to see you.
Yeah. So, we work on the political council together, and the purpose of our council is to help educate and encourage our members to engage in the legislative or the political process. Um,
Right.
you know, Politics is everywhere around us, and some people don't like that, or they don't like to admit that that's the case, but it really is a part of our entire life, from the bag of bread that we buy at the store, to the emergency insulin bill that you just worked really hard to get passed into law. Um,
Right.
we don't, on the political council, expect um, our rank and file members to be as obsessed with politics as we are, right? But I do think
No,
that,
it'd be kind of weird if they were in some ways,
yeah,
but
yeah. I mean, we might not need to fight as hard if that was the case, but
right.
um, I think it's really important that we try to get the rest of Minnesota, the rest of our membership, especially labor, that we represent here, a little bit more engaged in the democratic process than they currently are. And like we just talked
Right.
about, that's the purpose of the political council, right? So you were a key organizer in the effort to pass the Alec Smith emergency insulin bill that was just signed into law, right?
I'd like to think that's true. Yeah, I certainly played my part, both as a member of the political council and as part of Insulin for All.
Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit about what this bill provides for diabetics in Minnesota?
Sure. So it provides an emergency supply, a 30-day renewable supply of insulin for someone who loses access due to loss of insurance, which in America, we tie insurance to employment. So a lot of people are losing their jobs right now. So a lot of folks are going to lose access to their health insurance, and then a lot of diabetics will therefore lose access to their insulin. This provides a supply that they can simply go to the pharmacy with their existing prescription and pick up a supply of insulin that is provided to them for free. The insulin is then supplied back to the pharmacies by the insulin manufacturers. So the insulin manufacturers are effectively providing the product at cost for them, um, but it keeps diabetics alive. The bill also provides for more long-term affordability solutions for diabetics. There's kind of two different parts of the bill. One is the emergency supply, and one is the long-term affordability issues that many diabetics struggle with, because the cost of insulin is at retail is exorbitantly high, and not an accurate reflection of what it costs to manufacture, market, and supply that insulin. It's price gouging.
Yeah, it's over $1,000 a month now, isn't it? If you,
Easily, and
yeah,
it depends on how much insulin you use. I mean, every diabetic's a little different in how much they use, but yeah, the cost is exorbitant, at least $1,000 a month.
wow. So how long does the long-term provisions, does that go on for years? Is it indefinite? How does that work?
It's it's renewable. I think uh, we need to get it to the point where it is indefinite. You know, uh, the bill's not perfect yet. Um, it was it's the product of compromises uh, with uh, the defenders of the pharmaceutical industry. So it doesn't have as much buy-in from pharma as there should be, and it's not. There's gaps in the bill. For example, if you are yourself an undocumented alien, or you are the child of someone who is undocumented, for example, what we're talking about is someone who's born in the United States but is nevertheless the son or daughter of an undocumented person. Those folks don't qualify for help under this bill. They were intentionally excluded, which is a travesty. So the bill's not perfect, but it's certainly better than what we had,
Yeah,
and what we had was nothing.
right. And I'm sure those things will be talked about in in further legislative session, I hope. But
I hope so.
I think that this leads well into my next question, which was like, just in general, what was your experience like in fighting for this life saving, essential emergency insulin bill, and maybe we could talk about some of the compromises and how that um,
Hmm.
your experience in that.
Um, it was. And I'm going to use your question as an opportunity to kind of back off and say, politics is about the allocation of uh, the identification and allocation of public resources. It's the Merriam-Webster definition of politics is of or relating to government or the conduct of government. So as state employees, everything we do is inherently political, whether we like it or not. Um, every decision we make in our day about, am I going to work on this project or this project? That's essentially a political decision because you're allocating government resources. Um, so as state employees, we are inherently political. I think what people don't like, for understandable reasons, is when politics gets partisan. And it was the partisan nature of politics in fighting for the Alec Smith bill that was absolutely maddening. Um, uh, we There was one of the two major political parties was very much in the pockets of pharma, the pharmaceutical industry. They were bought off by pharma. The uh, House minority leader is literally paid for. That's his day job, is to be a pharma rep. Um, and the pushback we got from that side of the political aisle, the partisan pushback we got, was nothing short of shameful. We had one representative who called the the insulin advocates national socialists, knowing full well that that's shorthand for Nazi, which was just absurd. I mean, these are just people fighting for the medication that they needed to survive or that their family members needed to survive. They're not Nazis.
Right.
Um, uh, and it was that kind of rhetoric for a year and a half that we were getting. That it was ignorant, it was hurtful, and it was completely unnecessarily partisan. I remember when the bill died last year, uh, the first time it died. Um, One of the things that Senator Benson, for example, said is that if diabetics need an emergency insulin, they can just go to the emergency room, which is just incredibly ignorant of how this disease works. You need to take insulin every time you eat something.
Right.
You can't go to the emergency 3 or 4 times a day and go to the emergency room 3 or 4 times a day. You'd never leave.
Right.
So it was the unwillingness on the part of that side of the political spectrum to even educate themselves about what this was.
Yeah.
And it was just a position of no, 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 no. You guys are just trying to get something for free. That was incredibly hurtful.
Yeah. It sounds like it. And to me, the position of the House Minority Leader feels a lot like this right-wing populism that has popped up and has gotten really powerful over the last 40 years. And that's
Right.
been an effort to strip workers' rights away, to maximize profit, even at the cost of the human.
Mm-hmm.
And it's become incredibly powerful, but in essence, it's an organization effort, just like we are trying to do to back workers. So it
Right.
baffles me that they have become so much more powerful and so much more profitable than labor has. And that's where our work lies. I see it in the political council, is to bring that perspective back to labor. And in doing that, we're trying to educate our members on the political process. Um, all of that, I think, is really important perspective, that it was a painful process to watch people basically dehumanize diabetics. Um, and
Right.
and you take away this life-saving medication, or force them into poverty in order to pay for it, or sometimes die because they can't pay for it. But this perspective that you have, I think, in being part of the conversation, in bringing your union with you, is being forward that you are a state employee. How do we use your experience to bring the conversation back to the worker's perspective?
Uh, Good question. I think there's any number of things we can do and any number of ways we can go. I think, and right now, I'm just spitballing here, but I know when I was interviewed by the news media in relationship to this, it was always because I always combined my two hats as I was doing this advocacy. I had the support of MAPE. And I was also part of Insulin for All. And when I was interviewed by the media, I wore my MAPE hat. And one of the things I repeatedly said is, "Look, I'm a state employee. I use the healthcare benefits that MAPE has negotiated for me, and they're great. Compared to what other diabetics get, even with good insurance in the private sector, my coverage is outstanding. This isn't for me. And this isn't, you know, MAPE isn't doing this because MAPE members need this per se, not as an immediate need, but because it's the right thing to do. Um, it's the right thing to do because there's a larger need that affects workers generally, and
Yeah.
as a labor union, certainly our members are extremely important, but we all do better and we all do better, as Wellstone said. So when other workers are doing better because as a society we're banding together to provide workers what they need,
Yeah.
then those of us in MAPE, we're doing better too.
Yeah. But
So,
yeah, there's this really interesting intersection here, though, where as state employees we are um, discouraged, or sometimes forbidden from being a political workforce,
right,
um, and I think that is to the detriment of the worker, and maybe a calculated effort. And it takes a lot of courage to stand up and say, I am a worker. I am fighting for all of Minnesota. Um, and again, it takes a lot of courage. So I think your perspective is really valuable to our membership here, to maybe help give them the courage to stand up and realize that politics are everywhere, and there's no way just simply saying that you don't like that or ignoring it, right? It democracy dies in darkness, right?
right,
Yeah,
right. We don't have the luxury of ignoring it any longer. The stakes are too high. There is a partisan movement in this country that's been organizing for the last 40 years, and this is what you were hinting at, and has out-organized us, quite frankly, because we've become complacent. But there's a conservative partisan movement that is aiming to strip workers of workers' rights, and it's all about corporate interests and the interests of the most wealthy individuals who don't need any more. They just don't. Um, and as people who have to trade our time and our labor for the resources we need to have shelter and eat food, we are the working class, and we need to band together with everyone else who's in a similar boat. Um, and and uh, uh, the we don't have the luxury of ignoring politics when part of the partisan political movement in this country would see us completely undone,
yeah,
and that's their goal.
yeah. That's very true. And hopefully, as we return back to like a post-COVID world, hopefully we can take some of the new perspective that we built, that GDP is no longer a measure of success. It's a measure of all of the things that are not important to
Right.
the quality of life. And hopefully we can reprioritize some things. So I look forward to continuing this conversation with you on the political council as we bring this in front of our members and encourage them to get more involved and just to be more aware, to be
Hmm.
more confident in talking about politics with their coworkers, with their families, to make it part of everyday conversation. So thanks for joining me, Jason. Thank you so much
You
for your
bet.
perspective, and thank you for fighting for the emergency insulin bill.
You too. Good to see you.
Yeah, thank you.